Now, the Congolese government says more than 7,000 people have been killed and nearly 500,000 have been forcibly displaced since January in Eastern Democratic Republic of the Congo. Now, it's the latest cycle of violence for civilians living in a region plagued by at least 3 decades of conflict as more than 120 different groups battle the army for control and resources. Both Congolese President Felix Tshisekedi and Rwandan President Paul Kagame blame each other for the fall of 2 key cities to the M23 rebels. That's Goma and Bukavu, along with other towns in the east. Let's take a look at allegations and counter-allegations about who is behind it all. So the M23 are made up of mostly ethnic Tutsis. They say they are protecting the rights of 2 minority Congolese Tutsi groups in the DRC. That's the Banyamulenge, who live mainly in South Kivu, and the Banyarwanda, who live in North Kivu. The Congolese government blames Rwanda for backing them. That's because several United Nations reports accuse Rwanda of providing weapons and logistical support to M23. The UN says its evidence is based on authenticated photographs which show the presence of Rwandan defense forces in the DRC, including the deployment of up to 4,000 of its troops, as well as drone footage, video recordings, testimonies and intelligence that shows M23's strength has grown since May. But Rwanda denies the allegations. Instead, the Rwandan government accuses Congolese authorities of working with the FDLR rebels, that's the Democratic Forces for the Liberation of Rwanda. They include some Hutu fighters who carried out the genocide against the Tutsis in 1994. Rwanda considers them as an existential threat, but the DRC refutes the allegation that it's working with them. Arguably, the vast mineral wealth in eastern Congo has compounded the conflict. The DRC holds 70% of the world's coltan production used in mobile phones and almost every kind of electronic device. It also produces 57% of the world's cobalt used in lithium-ion batteries in laptops, smartphones and electric vehicles. It also supplies the world with 20% of its diamonds, 10% of its copper deposits, 4% lithium and 2% of its gold. M23 has made key advances in North and South Kivu. These 2 provinces are key areas for coltan, gold, tin and tungsten. Katanga province in southern DRC is rich in copper and cobalt, while Ituri on the east has significant gold deposits. Maniema province has tin, tungsten and coltan deposits, while Kasai is home to diamond mining operations. M23 now controls several territories in North Kivu, for instance, Walikale, Masisi, Rutshuru, Lubero, and Beni, where mining for gold, diamonds, wolfram, cassiterite, and coltan takes place. All right, let's hear more from Ngala Chome. He's a research fellow at Ghent University in Belgium. He joins me from Nairobi, Kenya. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Let's unpack this because the DRC blames Rwanda for the M23 rebel takeover. Rwanda, on the other hand, blames Congo for the FDLR rebels, and none of these 2 parties are willing to compromise. So the big question is, how can peace be negotiated?
I mean, it's difficult, yet this is, a narrative that is repeating itself, historically, as you correctly put it. This is a conflict that is now entering, it's now well in its 3rd decade. Since the 1994 genocide in Rwanda against the Tutsis, refugees, sort of populations flee Rwanda into eastern Congo, and Kagame's military takes over Kigali. This is RPF. Kagame then becomes president. Since then, Kagame has spoken to governments in Kinshasa, regarding this existential threat, he states, to his country that stems from the Interahamwe or Hutu genociders that are now hiding into, as Rwanda claims, into the FDLR. M23 itself is also sort of the latest, if you like, formation of that Tutsi victimization narrative, if you like, that comes from the CNDP, which actually joined the Congolese army right about 2009, actually 23rd of March 2009. 2 years later, a mutiny of the CNDP leads to the creation of M23, led by Bosco Ntaganda. Immediately takes over Goma in 2012, but because of international pressure, the M23 in 2012 was forced to leave Goma, but has now sort of come back to life, if you like, has reemerged since late 2021. Mm-hmm. And you know, in a few short weeks of January 2025, has taken over a couple of cities, and now including Goma and Bukavu. The narrative still remains the same, that the M23 claims to be protecting Congolese Tutsis. It is widely believed, as you also correctly put, that the M23 has received huge backing from Rwanda, and the M23 also stands against this FDLR threat that Rwanda sees as existential. Yeah. Mm-hmm. This is just the latest. The point I'm trying to make is that this is just the latest of a long historical history of accusations and counter-accusations between Kinshasa and Kigali. And it seems that, you know, no solution is actually near.
Exactly, and that's the question. So what will it, because you've taken us through, you know, the history, you've painted a very good picture of what the problem is. I mean, we've had previous peace processes that involved Rwandan President Paul Kagame and the former DRC President Joseph Kabila, but now it's Kagame versus Tshisekedi. Just what is it going to take to bring these two to agree? Because that's the only way this conflict will end.
Well, so again, what happened is that this is also the region in which between 1998 and 2001 was the site of what has been known as Africa's First World War, or the Second Congo War, where up to 7 African militaries at one point were fighting within the borders of the Democratic Republic of the Congo. So the fear right now is that we do not want to go back to that state, to that situation. According to me, in my view, I feel like the proposition a few years ago by the East African Community, of which DRC recently joined, and followed by that, the intervention by SADC, the Southern African Development Community, to send an interventionist force to really take care of this problem in Eastern DRC, is probably the best option that Tshisekedi and the region has at the moment. So rather than this sort of, sorry.
Yeah, sorry, I apologize for interjecting. But you see, this is not the first of the peace processes we've had. We've had so many, I can't even number them. And like you rightly said, we have this new one, a joint force, you know, joint forces of the EAC and SADC. I mean, what do they need to get right this time around? Because we've had so very many peace processes, Mr. Ngala.
I feel like what the joint intervention, if it comes to be, between SADC and EAC to send another intervention force, in this case, one that joins up both of, you know, both these economic blocks, is that the new thing about it is that it moves away from these sort of bilateral agreements that the DRC governments that governments in DRC always get into with neighboring countries, right? So this will be a unified collective effort by DRC's neighbors, right? Mm-hmm. to deal with this problem. I think this will be the first time, maybe since the Forced Intervention Brigade in 2012 under MONUSCO that took the M23 out of Goma.
Right.
Of course, the failure of the 2012 intervention is that it failed to provide a political solution. It was a military solution that worked, but following that, there wasn't so much headway that was made into politically resolving this long historical crisis. So what the heads of the East African Community, but also SADC, need to think about that in addition to sending a force, which in itself is, I think, a step in the right direction, because then it means that countries will not be competing for influence within the DRC in their own way, but will be working through these regional authorities, is to provide a long-lasting political solution.
Right.
And I think that Kagame himself has spoken about what that should look like or could look like, which is basically trying to redress the stated marginalization of Congolese Tutsis, and also, you know, from the Congolese side, represented by Tshisekedi, to probably provide an opportunity as well to address his concerns that Rwanda has mainly been playing a spoiler role within his own country. I think these issues are better addressed through a political process and not just a military.
All right. And as we wind up, Ms. Tangala, I mean, both the UK and the US have imposed sanctions against Rwanda. The UK in particular has cut financial aid to Rwanda. So just how is this likely to impact the push for peace in the region?
It is quite interesting, actually, because one, you know, Rwanda has had an agreement with the British government to host asylum seekers to the United Kingdom in Rwanda. So the question is, what happens to that agreement, for example? Rwanda also entered into an agreement with the EU to supply certain minerals as well, most of which are believed to be sourced from the Congo. I mean, the question is, what happens to these sort of very formalized agreements as well? I mean, Rwanda has come out quite, Rwanda has stated that it won't be fazed by such sanctions as it is fighting, according to them, an existential crisis. But I think that increased sanctions may actually lead to some changes. However, I feel like sort of African-led regional solutions are the best way to go, rather than, you know, sanctions with countries further in the West.
All right. Okay, great place to end it. Thank you so much, Ms. Tangala Chome there, a research fellow at the Ghent University in Belgium. Still to come here on Africa Matters.
I'm Razia Athman, and I'll explain how an ambitious project of mapping pregnant mothers has helped save hundreds of babies and reduced mortality rates by half.
We head to South Africa's Stilfontein mine next, which has been closed since January after illegal miners were removed. It's now under 24-hour police surveillance, and the once busy shafts are now quiet. But businesses in the area say their cash flow has also dried up. Musam Khalifi has more from there.
The only thing that may be left in Stilfontein Shaft 11 are the ghosts of Zamazamas, illegal miners who died there. Operation Valumgodi, or Close the Hole, was a brutal government enforcement action that took place from August 2024 to January 2025 and ultimately resulted in the deaths of at least 80 men, likely from starvation. But the shutting down of the operation has impacted local businesses. Once bustling establishments that thrived on customer traffic are now enveloped in an unsettling quiet.
The Zamazamas were the ones who brought in more money in Kuma. There was business. Ever since this happened, it's been quiet.
For many years, illegal miners were a crucial economic support and a vital presence in Stilfontein and the nearby Kuma township. Taxis now operate with empty seats. Residents are trying to find other jobs to sustain their families in a country where 1 in 3 people is jobless, according to the latest official figures. We would like to see job creation. We have kids. They are done with school and are now just sitting at home with their certificates. We appeal to the government to help assist with jobs, especially here in Kuma. Some locals also feel Zamazamas were not only a financial boon for businesses, but they also provided a sense of security against crime.
The Zamazamas are so made feel degraded because they're always named as criminals and bad people. And I can honestly say, from the bottom of my heart, they have just been good to the Stilfontein and Kuma community. They protect us, they look after us, they're not at all what people say they are.
To address the widening poverty gap and facilitate the return of miners to Stilfontein, community leaders want authorities to legalize small-scale mining.
I'm not against with an operation Valumkoti, but can they legalize the certificate and give the community artisan certificates so that, because that's the only thing that we know in Stilfontein and in Kuma.
Analysts estimate that there are about 30,000 illegal miners working in the 6,000 abandoned mine shafts across the country. People believe they've mostly been taken over by violent criminal syndicates. The government says that illegal mining cost the economy more than $3 billion last year. But whether the fallout from the months-long standoff in Stilfontein will prompt it to take an alternative approach when it comes to artisanal mining and the communities it supports remains to be seen. Musam Kalipi, Africa Matters, Stilfontein, South Africa.
Now, Uganda's official statistics show that nearly 200 out of every 100,000 mothers died due to complications during pregnancy and childbirth in 2022. But an initiative is now tracking pregnant mothers to offer timely treatment. Razia Athman has this story from Isingiro.
30-year-old Dusabe Maria is expecting her 5th child. Like many women here at the Nachivale refugee settlement in western Uganda, she was convinced by Medical Teams International to seek professional help. The mapping of expectant mothers started 5 years ago, and more women are now surviving their pregnancies.
The women can get pregnant from outside marriage, so they are scared to go to the hospitals. Others fear because they get pregnant when they're still very young.
According to the 2022 Uganda Demographic Health Survey, the maternal mortality ratio has now almost halved, while infant mortalities have dropped more than 25%. But there's still a way to go to meet the UN Sustainable Development Goals, which aims to reduce the global maternal mortality rate to fewer than 70 per 100,000.
The aim of pregnancy mapping, like I told you earlier, is to make sure all mothers whom we know as pregnant out there in the community attains antenatal care. And the information which we record in our pregnancy diary, that is the mapping register, tells you which mother is where and when are they due for antenatal care.
When mothers first come, they gather here for group health education. They are then registered at the antenatal care unit with their medical histories and undergo an examination free of charge. Mothers with known risk factors are booked for non-emergency C-sections, while those who develop further complications undergo emergency operation. Up to 7 cesarean sections can be conducted here on a busy day. Most of the mothers handled are refugees, but 30% are from host communities and neighboring districts. But the data collected is not digitized, and that is a gap the UNHCR says needs to be closed.
But yes, the data is there. The only challenge right now that we are struggling with is it's a bit cumbersome to work with this kind of non-digitized data.
According to the latest World Health Organization data, a maternal death occurred almost every 2 minutes in 2020, caused by severe bleeding, infections, and high blood pressure, which can all be prevented. And even though there has been a slight change, it's hoped that if extended across the country, mapping of pregnant mothers could save even more lives. Razia Athman, Africa Matters, Isingiro, Uganda.
Now to Eswatini in Southern Africa, where sports like football reign supreme. But the Trojan Horse Chess Club is trying to change things up by teaching chess to rural girls and boys. Nokuhanya Musi has more from Manzini.
Swazi chess coach William Siame began his club 6 years ago. He's given many kids the opportunity to develop critical thinking, strategic decision-making, and perseverance.
Chess is a brilliant sport. It helps in many different kinds of ways. Like it helps you solve problems in mathematics. It helps you discover more. It embraces your mind. And with strategy, it helps you strategize what you need in life.
The club challenges the stereotypical narrative that chess is outside the grasp of African children by producing International Chess Federation or FIDE-rated players who have competed in India and Romania. But in a country where the UN reports teenage pregnancy rates and juvenile crime, children often have very limited opportunities.
Coach William, Coach Kaniso, they took me under their wings. And they didn't see that girl that had her mistakes, but instead they saw a girl who was able to push through all the norms of society that chess has placed, that has been placed for chess. So chess has really changed my life.
With only a few chess sets, a passion for the game, and a determination to uplift young minds, Siame and the Trojan Horse Chess Club offer an alternative pathway to success for children. Since it began in 2018, the club has welcomed over 100 young players, providing them with more than just chess skills.
One of the visions is about building character in the little ones. As they grow and playing chess, they face so many challenges, and chess actually helps them to overcome some of those things. And the last of the vision is develop future leaders. In developed countries, chess is part of their curriculum, and it's something that you want to do here in our community.
Chess is an amazing sport that has helped me mature mentally. It helped me to overcome many losses in life, and it also allowed me to calculate better, especially in my subjects such as math.
The Trojan Horse Chess Club is trying to reshape the future for this group of Eswatini youngsters, empowering them to think critically, break barriers, and carve out their own success, one strategic move at a time. Nogukanya Musi, Africa Matters, Manzini, Eswatini.
Now in Ghana, women's boxing is getting a lot of attention after a Ghanaian female boxer won an international championship. But as Yunus Demiroglu reports, she's had to overcome more than just odds in the ring.
At 28, Ghanaian Abigail Kwordika became a world champion. She beat British boxer Sangeeta Birdie in Jamestown, winning the WIBF World Super Bantamweight title in November last year.
My aunts and siblings didn't like when I started boxing. They would come here to beg my coach not to let me become a boxer. But he told them that I'm a good fighter and that I will do well. I kept running off to the gym to train, and they were upset and complaining. It was all because they hadn't seen a woman boxing. But thankfully, my coach encouraged me, and now I'm a professional boxer.
Jamestown is a fishing town and one of the oldest neighborhoods in Accra. Kwardy is from the Ga ethnic group, native to Accra before it was colonized by the British, who introduced boxing in the 1920s.
There were women in boxing before I ventured into boxing. They were with the national team, but at that time, women on the national team were not allowed to travel outside Ghana. I became the first woman boxer to travel outside Ghana on the ticket of the Black Bombers national boxing team, just like I have become the first lady to win a world title for Ghana.
Kwardy says she was doing odd jobs like selling rice before she started boxing with her brother, and followed through with support from her coach.
Her title is a big deal for her, and the gym, the community, the nation of Ghana, Africa, and the world at large. It is not easy to win such a title, and no woman from Ghana has ever won such a thing.
Kwardy's path has already started to pave the way for others.
They don't support me at the beginning because I was the only female in the family who liked boxing. And anytime I try going to training, they will discourage me. They will be talking, go and work, you are a woman, you can't box and stuff. But they saw that still I was still boxing, so they didn't have any choice than to support me.
But traditional stereotypes are not the only challenge for Ghana's boxers.
Even the male boxers, when they fight with non-Africans, it's very difficult for them to win because they have a lot more facilities and equipment than we do.
Which makes Kwardy's win even more spectacular as she continues to punch above her weight. Yunus Demiroglu, TRT World.
That's our show this week. Share your thoughts and suggestions about the stories you've seen on this episode, or ideas on what you'd like us to cover on YouTube or on X using the hashtag Africa Matters. Thanks for watching, and it's goodbye from me, Grace Kuria Kanja.